Good morning to all of you. We're happy to see you today and glad to have you with us. Thanks for coming, and guests, thank you especially for being here. We're happy that others who have been sick and couldn't be here are back, and we're having a good time being together. Several of you have been asking me, when's Betty coming back? When's Betty coming back? Well, there's a sense in which she didn't leave, in that she's been with us in worship every Sunday morning online, and promised that she'd be there again this morning. So hello, Betty. And she was here Wednesday night. The ladies were so gracious. On Wednesday night, we announced that she and Monty were kind of sitting in the crosshairs of a tornado and asked for prayers. And so the ladies went back to the library for class, and there they connected with her and included her in prayer. And she just was so touched by that, ladies. Thank you. And then yesterday, the book club met, and they brought her in online as well. And then she's with us today. But 2 weeks from today, she should be here in body. She teaches the third of those 4 Monday night classes tomorrow night at Heritage Christian University, and then the following Monday night she will teach the last one of those. During that week, the plan is that I'll zip over there and pick her up and bring her back. Well, I'll not necessarily pick her up, but anyway, we'll come back together, Lord willing, and she'll be here on the 17th. Now, let me move quickly to remind you, Jed reminded us gently this morning that it's just less than 2 weeks until our young people will be involved in the LTC in Kansas City. I mean, when we come back 2 weeks from today, that'll be history, won't it? It will have occurred early part of that weekend, and you'll be back Saturday night if I got my calendar right. And so be praying for them. Months and months and months go into preparation for that. And our young people always do such a grand job. I wish everybody could just be there to watch them and listen to them and see their behavior, how exemplary they are. And it's just a rewarding experience to see them and share with them. That's part of why I wanted to dedicate this short series of lessons that we've been having for 2 weeks, and I promise that we'll try to finish today, about life lessons from Daniel chapter 2. I just want to dedicate it to the young people because I think that there are principles there that, although they apply to us all, they are things that would be so good for young people to learn in their young years and be able to use it throughout their lives. As we look into that circumstance again, not reading it, but just abbreviating the report of what happened. Of course, Daniel and his friends had been taken away captive from Jerusalem, and they are in Babylon. And there they are, in a sense, they are prisoners of war, but they're being treated well. They've been selected because of their intellect and their fine character, not only brought there, but educated there as well. Their names are changed. They are rebranded, so to speak. They're trying to indoctrinate them into the religion and the culture that exists in Babylon. And Daniel's name is changed to Belteshazzar. He is named Bel will take care of you. And you don't know how all those changes would tend to influence young people. And what a graphic difference it could make if they just go with the flow. But the lessons we're learning from what happened there was that the king had a great dream, and he came to all of his magicians and his soothsayers and wise men as a class of people. And he said, I had this dream. I want you to tell me what the dream was and then interpret it for me. What does it mean? All those many, many men that he'd been supporting who claimed that they could interpret dreams and see the future and all those kinds of things began to stutter and say, well, we tell us what you dreamed. And he said, I'm not telling you what I dreamed, and you tell me both what I dreamed and what the meaning is, and if not, you'll be executed. Well, that starts to be complicated by the fact that our friend Daniel, being considered also a very wise young man, along with his friends who'd come with him from Jerusalem, are cast into that whole plot, and they'll be also executed if there isn't an interpretation. When the news came to him, apparently he wasn't in the inner circle that first received that news. He said, wait, let me get me an interview. And with Nebuchadnezzar, he said, just let me talk to God. I'll explain it all. And he did. And today we get to that point where he does explain the dream and its interpretation. But in the meantime, we've seen that lessons implied in this all is that things around you may change. Undoubtedly, young people, they will change in your lifetime. But make sure that you stay the same. Stay grounded in what you've learned from God's word and your relationship to God. The second thing was be careful about with whom you associate and with whom you get categorized. Because now that Daniel is considered one of the wise men, he's considered just like all the rest. And so had they been executed, he would have been executed with them. You got to make sure that you're safe in with whom you throw in, so to speak, become friends and partners, because that might lead you into a very, very precarious situation. Third lesson was don't promise to do something you can't. Don't pretend to be something you aren't. And that's what the salient issue was with these others. They were claiming that they could do things they couldn't do. And when they're called on to do it, then they're really in deep trouble. You can be too if you don't just stay thoroughly honest, transparent, be what you claim to be, and as the scriptures urge, let your yes be yes and your no be no, and do not tell lies and don't make pretenses. That'll be much, much safer. We move then to realize that we should understand that God has the supporter. He is the provider of all wisdom that comes from above, and for every good and every perfect gift. When Daniel knew that I need to interpret this and I need help to be able to do so, he knew to go to God because that's the source of all knowledge. You keep that in mind all through your life, young people. You'll be going to colleges and you'll be hearing people that are saying things that are very different, undoubtedly, than what you have always believed. You'll hear people saying things that are commonly, perhaps, accepted, but they're not true. In the last week, there's been something that's on the social media that I would normally bring up, except that whenever one actor slapped another last Sunday night on the Oscars presentation, it became really a big issue. But one other actor has said since that the speech that Will Smith made, where he quoted another person telling him that the devil will attack you in your weakest point and at your weakest time, the other actor said, well, that's a fairy tale. There is no devil. That's just all made up stuff. Well, who called on him to explain theology? But you see, he'll not be questioned by very many people, because so many already see it that way in the culture you are in. And I don't know where it goes from now, but you trust that as we studied from Malachi chapter 3 in the adult class here, God said, I do not change. You can rely on God consistently in his word, and what he says is true, and all truth is revealed by him with all wisdom from above. But what's left? I suggest today that we need to understand that God is not surprised by anything that happens. There's no news to God because he already knows the things that are going to happen. He sees in advance and he's available. In all of those situations, God is present to do his will. But whenever Daniel got an opportunity to meet with Nebuchadnezzar. He starts in verse 31 of chapter 2, and he said, here's what the dream was. I think that's fascinating because this is not a typical dream. And the man hasn't given any hint as to what his dream was. But Daniel said, you saw a giant creature. We assume it was like the statue of a man, the way that it's pictured. You saw this giant creature, and the head was of gold. His chest and shoulders were of silver. His abdomen, his middle, was of bronze, and then it's gold, silver, bronze, yes. And then you got into there being iron beneath that and the thighs, and below that, he said there began to be iron and clay mixed down into the feet. And then immediately he says, and the interpretation is this. He said, you, O King Nebuchadnezzar, are the head of gold. But after you, there will be another kingdom come that is not as pure and not as fine as you are, and your kingdom is. And another that will still be lesser, and another that's lesser, and finally one that will be combined with things that are solid and strong, and with the clay that isn't, and the iron and the clay won't mix coherently. And he said, when that happens, there will be a little stone that is cut out of the hill, not with human hands, and it will come and strike that great statue at its feet, where the iron and the clay are not coherent, and it will cause the disassembling of the whole thing, because that clay and iron will break and the rest will come crashing down. And then he said, that little stone, cut out not by human hands, will become a great nation that will cover the whole earth. Daniel was rewarded for having interpreted the dream, for having told what the dream was and having interpreted it. But the principle involved there is to realize that God knew what was going to happen. We are at that point in history, we are some 6 centuries before what is played out there actually happened. Because after the Babylonian government was replaced by the Medes and then the Persian, the combination of the Medo-Persian Empire spread greatly. There came the Greeks that covered the whole world, to the point that Alexander is quoting as having wept because there are no more nations to capture. Overcome eventually by the Roman Empire, which itself in its last days began to disintegrate into the various parts and different people over different areas. And he said, in the days of these kings, that stone will be cut out. He was looking forward and realizing and prophesying even the time and what government would be in place in Israel at the time that Jesus would be born. It was in the days of the Roman kings that Jesus was born. It was in the days of the Roman kings that the church was established, recorded in Acts chapter 2. It was like a stone that kept on arising. Jesus is our rock. And Jesus said to the apostles, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. The fact that I am the Christ, the Son of the living God, that Peter just had said he was in Matthew chapter 16, in verse 18, he said, I'm going to build my church upon that, and even hell can't overcome it. It would fulfill that which was spread to the whole world. And he would say, go into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. Which lets us know also one more principle. That is that Jesus and the church were always in the mind of God. From the beginning, he was working out his plan. It is discovered in Ephesians chapter 3, when the Apostle Paul talks about how grand was the opportunity that he had to unfold the story of Jesus Christ. He called it the mystery of Christ. And then he said, beyond that, I also get to tell about the secret things of God, the mysteries that were hidden in God forever, the thing God always had in mind. We might say, what was it, Paul? What are you talking about? He said that through the church, the manifold wisdom of God would now be made known to principalities and powers in heavenly places. This is according to the eternal purpose of God, which he's now realized in Christ Jesus. It couldn't happen until the King was born. It couldn't happen until the plans had all been fulfilled and the time was right. In fact, Galatians chapter 4 and verse 4 says, when the time was right, in the fullness of time, he was born under the law, born unto woman. Indeed, it's just the right time. Paul said in Romans chapter 6 and verse 5, when we were yet helpless, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. And in chapter 8, verse 5, he talks about the fact, or 5 and 8, he says, if God commendeth his love toward us in that while we're yet sinners, Christ Jesus died for us. This was the unfolding of the eternal grace of God revealed through Jesus at the right time. And Ephesians chapter 1 and 7 talks about the fullness of time. In verse 10, that the kingdom came in the fullness of time. And then verse 7, that we in whom we have redemption, even the forgiveness of our sin through his blood. God has no surprises. He finds no news because he knows and controls all things. Whenever you're out in the world as an adult or as a teen, whatever age you may reach, keep in mind that God has a plan. He's always been involved. He is now. He always will be. And the things that he has in mind will not be superseded. There may be some delays, it seems to us. There may be some pitfalls that Satan is able to present. And incidentally, Satan is real and alive and well in the world, no matter what the movie industry and those who participate in it may allege. Still, the scriptures are true. Satan, as a roaring lion, goeth about seeking whom he may devour, as Peter said in 1 Peter chapter 5 and verse 8. That's not past, that's not over, it's going on. Consequently, concluding, we should keep in mind that we are expected to be people who are different, like Daniel and his friends were different. They were distinct in a foreign world. So as we live in a world that is not always something that's easy to do, a world that's not always accepting of Christianity and of our tending to keep the laws of God, not always easy, still, we must not change. And God will not fail and God will not change, and he asks us to come out from among them and be ye separate, saith the Lord. He'd asked the people of the Old Testament to do that. It's quoted in the New Testament in 2 Corinthians chapter 6, come out from among them. And he said, be ye separate, saith the Lord, and I will be your God and you will be my people. That's the key, to be distinct and be different. We are urged by the Apostle Paul to present ourselves as living sacrifices in Romans chapter 1, verses 1 and 2, wholly acceptable unto the God. Be ye not conformed to the world, but be ye transformed, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. You be consistently obedient. You stick with what you believe, what you've been taught, and what is true. Jesus said, John 17, sanctify them by the truth, O Lord. Thy word is truth. It was then, it always will be. By their words we can be saved. James chapter 1 said, accept the engrafted word, which is able to save your soul. Acts John chapter 8:32. So you'll know the truth, and the truth will make you free. In verse 36, he said, if the Son makes you free, you'll be free indeed. You'll really know the fulfillment of what's involved in following Jesus, who will lead us in the right way to the right place. For he said, John 14:6, I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. And no man comes to the Father but by me. Those principles of life that need to be remembered, that come out of that chapter, are ones that are eternal. And they are ones that are consistent always. And I would urge young people and those who aren't so young anymore as well, hold on to the things that we learned from Daniel chapter 2. If you're here today and subject to the invitation of Jesus in any way, we're about to sing our song of encouragement, and it's designed to encourage you to be obedient. You may have needs in your life for prayer. You may need Jesus in your life. If you're one who's in the kingdom and you've erred, drifted, you've gone away, you can come back. And we'll pray with you that God will forgive you, but you have to make that move. You may be somebody who's never obeyed the gospel of Jesus Christ. You've never been baptized for the remission of sins. We can help you with that too. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, we can help you with that too. You let us know that you need help. And one of the best ways to do that is as we sing this song of encouragement, you can come to the front and we'll listen and we'll help you. Or you can come to us privately afterward and we'll help you. Just know we will help you if we can. And we invite you while we stand now and sing.